Dosm Rider Review.
Hey YouTube, Dosm Rider here with a Dosm's Rambles video, and yes, another one is happening before I do the Die Ranger one, for like the 3 people that care. It's basically a running joke now. The Die Ranger Dosm's Rambles is the RR and RR Kabutel of my videos. Anyway, this Dosm's Rambles, if you can tell probably by the title when you clicked on this, is a second look at Power Rangers Samurai / Super Samurai. Recently I rewatched the show. You know, due to the hiatus, I kind of wanted a PR show to rewatch, so I thought, why not Samurai? It's kind of one of those more iffy opinion ones amongst myself and the fandom. A fandom is in the... or like, I smushed the words together. Now I'm just going off the rails. Anyway, so yeah, it was a bit more of an iffy opinion, and I was curious how the series would feel. You can see the TV on. I'm getting really distracted easily. I'm like a little dog. I'm like, so let's talk about... Anyway, I wanted to see how the series felt. Watching it in a more continuous nature. I didn't sit down and binge watch in a couple settings. It was over a couple weeks because of, you know, various other things I'm watching and working on. But it was just a more continuous setting, because Samurai was kind of strange, because it was the first series to be under this new format of 2 years, so we were only getting 20 episodes a year. And Samurai is essentially, it's Samurai and Super Samurai, but I see it all as one series, essentially 40 episodes, not including Christmas specials and whatnot, aired over 2 years, and the gaps in between, so it was kind of a strange pacing for us. So I was curious to see how it paid off. And honestly, it came off a lot better the second time, and I actually honestly enjoyed it. There's going to be several things I'm going to go over in this. I said I was going to write things down for this, but I actually wound up just more thinking about it. But there's several things I'll talk about, and this is going to kind of be random like usual. Now, when going into this watch, I tried my absolute best to put Shinkenger out of my mind. Now, it's pretty much impossible to completely forget about a Sentai series or something you're trying to forget about when watching it, because short of getting it a neuralizer and erasing my memory of ever seeing Shinkenger, it's pretty much impossible to forget it. But I basically was able to put it out of my mind for the most part. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen anything Shinkenger. I think the last Shinkenger thing I watched was the Shinkenger vs. Goseiger movie, and that was years ago, and I haven't rewatched it or anything, so it's been quite some time. So other than knowing the basic plot, I wasn't able to as easily see so many scenes where I saw it as a direct copy. So I was trying to put it in that mindset when I was watching this. And ultimately, Samurai is definitely very flawed. Definitely has a lot of problems, but I don't think it actually quite deserves as much hate as it got. You know, principally, Samurai isn't too different from a series like Time Force or Wild Force. Now, Time Force in particular is very beloved, and I love it as well. But the thing is that both Time Force and Wild Force had this sort of formula of largely copying the Sentai series, and then adding certain things that were our own, and changing some things. And Samurai does that too. I think Time Force had the most out of those 3, at least that I remember, the most changes. And Samurai probably had the least changes, but it still followed that basic formula. And, you know, I can't speak for everybody, but, you know, a good majority of the people around my age that are older fans, when Time Force or Wild Force came out, they either weren't aware of Sentai, or, you know, they couldn't watch it. Because that I remember back then, I don't think there was that many ways to see it unless you spoke Japanese or got some DVDs with crap subs. So if Sentai definitely wasn't a prevalent thing back then. So definitely when you view that first, it comes off a lot better. So if Time Force or Wild Force today was airing today, in the sort of climate we have of people watching Sentai first, I get a feeling there'd be a lot more nitpickers like, oh, they copied it, nothing beats the original Japanese mature show. So I think that because of that, people don't nitpick those as much because most people saw those first. So I think Samurai was an unfortunate victim because Shinkenger was the first Sentai series that aired when we knew there wasn't going to be an adaptation. I mean, obviously there was an adaptation, but at the time we believed it wasn't. So I know that there was a great deal of people that it was their first Sentai because they thought, well, Power Rangers is over, time to jump on the Sentai bandwagon. So I think that it in particular got scrutinized because people were already into Sentai and watching it before PR, but even more people came into it. And when something is your first toku show, whether it be Sentai or Rider, even if it becomes less and less your favorite over the years, you still kind of have a soft spot for it. So I think Samurai got that unfortunate backlash. I'm more so talking about fans than I am Samurai at this point, but hear me out. But the point is I think that Samurai and Formula is not too different from Time Force and Wild Force. And I think that it just got more scrutiny than it deserved in several aspects. And in particular, also one of them is the acting. I definitely agree, Samurai had some spotty acting, in particular from Kevin, aka Naji. No personal offense to him, I'm sure he's a nice guy, even though he's refused to meet me. Not like really, I just never got a chance at Morphicon. But, he was probably the worst. Like, no offense to the guy personally, but he definitely had the worst, like, we must stop them at all costs! It was terrible. But it was all spotty, but people are remembering PR acting better than it was. Like, the Saban era in particular. The acting at MMPR was not good. The acting in a lot of the other Saban seasons was not always good. And people, I think, were way harsher on it because they just remember it better. Now, we were following the Disney era, which is another reason I thought Samurai had unfortunate luck, is that it followed RPM, which was a really well-done season. And the thing about the Disney seasons is, a lot of people actually used to complain about the acting, but if you actually look, the majority of the Disney actors are actually actors that have gone on to do a lot more things after Power Rangers than some of the Saban era actors are. Not to mention, a lot of them are actually pretty successful actors over there in New Zealand. So, anyway, the Disney era had better acting. But people, like, really attack the Samurai acting when I've seen some worse acting in previous seasons. Like, 2 seasons I'm going to mention here, or my most recent watches, really inform my opinion of this whole thing, which are Gao Ranger and Lightspeed Rescue. Lightspeed Rescue was the last Power Ranger season I rewatched before this. Lightspeed Rescue, I'm going to say right now, might be controversial, had some worse acting than Samurai. They had some cringe-worthy, downright terrible moments. There was the episode that revolved around a biker and Chad and Kelsey looked like they were being violated and that they were constipated all at once when they were acting. They constantly had this look on their face like they were struggling to hold it together. And there was some acting in Lightspeed that was atrocious that I actually thought Samurai was overall better in a lot of parts, acting-wise. But I think that acting-wise, definitely spotty for Samurai, but it was pretty much in the same wheelhouse as previously Saban did. Not to say that there hasn't been some good actors in the Saban era, or in the Neo-Saban era, but it's pretty much the same pool that they usually do. It's the same style of spotty acting as before, so I think people gave it too much of a bad rap. Now, like I said, Lightspeed informed that I saw some worse acting in Lightspeed. I'm gonna say it right now. I enjoyed my Samurai rewatch a lot more than I enjoyed my Lightspeed rewatch. Boom. Dropped the mic. That was literally mic. But anyway, now I always say Gao Ranger also informed this rewatch is because I watched Gao Ranger was one of the most recent Sentai I rewatched, and it was very close to Wild Force. Now, when I watch Sentai, I'm really unusual in the fact that instead of jumping off PR and thinking Sentai is the most greatest thing ever, I usually wind up having more respect for Power Rangers and what they did, and that was the case there too, because I really liked the changes that Wild Force made, and overall preferred Wild Force to Gao Ranger. And I think that's a good example with Samurai too, is I don't want to necessarily compare Shinkenger and Samurai, but the case is that the changes that Samurai made, whether they had to or it was creatively, I liked better. Like, Decker and Dayu's backstory pretty much had to be changed because it was a little more gruesome for children's television here. But I liked their story better in Samurai. I thought they humanized him more, made him a little more relatable, potentially redeemable. Obviously they weren't redeemed, which makes their story more sad, is that they both wound up being killed, despite essentially, you know, falling under unfortunate circumstances. But I liked their story better. I thought it made it more interesting. Also, Lauren, in comparison to the Japanese version, I really liked Lauren. Kaoru was kind of boring and bland, and Lauren had a lot more personality. I liked her more. I thought the setup of her and Jaden being related was a lot better because it made Jaden not seem like he was just some guy. And there were just things that I thought that it actually handled better. It was not too different from something like Gao Ranger and Wild Force, where they were principally the same, but they had changes, and I actually liked those changes. But anyway, I've gone on too much of a long tangent about fandoms and Sentai. That was mainly my point in comparing it, is that there are things to be talked about in terms of, like, the circumstances of... my point is... I'm going to slow down for a sec. I was trying to sort of express why I think Samurai got such a bad rap, and why it shouldn't have. Um, Now, a lot of people say something that really annoys me. The Sentai purists that say Power Rangers ruined Sentai, as if it retroactively ruins the show, which it doesn't. But I think Super Sentai can ruin Power Rangers, because when people watch it, they tend to think that Sentai is some sort of amazing, made-for-adults drama, when it's not. I've seen some Sentai that's downright trash, terrible, boring TV. And honestly, if I had to sit down all day and watch filler, I would gladly watch any PR filler before Sentai. Sentai can be downright excruciatingly boring. And I think that people watching Sentai can ruin their potential enjoyment of Power Rangers, which is unfortunate, because Power Rangers could be just as good as Sentai, if not better. Now, on to Samurai itself after the hour-long rant about random stuff. Like I said, I enjoyed it. Visually, it's a very beautiful show. The American footage, especially in suit, is great. Even the outside footage looked great. It's just a really nice show to watch. That's just one thing I wanted to get right off the bat. And the storyline, you know, like I said, when I watched it, I wasn't on this tangent, and I tried to put Shinkenger out, and the storyline is actually good. It's engaging, they have several different threads going on, they have this long, rich history of the samurai, and all these different plots and character moments going on, and it's very engaging. The last thing I will mention about Shinkenger is the one thing that was nice about Samurai is because it's roughly 10 episodes less, they cut out a large chunk of filler. Now, there certainly was still filler, but during Shinkenger, I was really bored around the middle, and they essentially cut that out. And there still was filler, but I felt like the story flowed a lot better in a continuous viewing. But the storyline was good. Now, there were things that are kind of nitpicky about, like, why are they not Asian if they're descendants of samurai, which I think could have been explained as that they were merely passed down from master to student instead of parent to child, or simply for me just removing the line centuries ago in Japan. And the Power Rangers universe is literally the craziest universe I follow of all the shows I watch. And I wouldn't have a hard time believing in the Power Rangers universe that samurais existed in the United States. Why not? Everything else is crazy in Power Rangers, but that's really more of a nitpick. But other than that, they had a rich history, an interesting history, the plots going on now, the rivalry with Decker. It was all very interesting, and it made for an engaging show, and I think that it's a good show for kids to start out with PR. I've now sort of started a complete PR rewatch, so I'm watching MMPR right now, and I grew up with that, and now I'm going back and watching it, and I'm like, this is terrible, there's no story, I'm having a hard time focusing. But I think that if kids nowadays, when they get to be around my age or older fans' age, and they go back and revisit it, sure, they might think, oh, this is a little cheesy, but I think it's a lot more watchable and enjoyable of a show to go back into and say, hey, look, it actually had a storyline. So yeah, I think it's actually good. Speaking to that sort of, you know, MMPR thing, they did reuse, or do a remix of the theme, and they reused a lot of remixed instrumental themes, which, I actually do kind of like the Samurai remix better than the Megaforce ones, but I kind of wish Samurai had gotten its own theme so it could have its own identity and background music, and they saved that for Megaforce, the, you know, revamped MMPR mix. I do wish that, even though some of the, the guitar riffs going on when the Megazords attacked was cool, and the sort of Rita's bass music worked for the Nylok bass, but I still wish it had gotten its own identity in that respect. But yeah, and character-wise, something I really didn't notice, one of my most major complaints about Samurai was that it felt like they were really disconnected from the city, like they weren't living a part of it. And that still held true, but I didn't feel it as much in this one because it sort of brought to light a problem that Megaforce has, which I really didn't think about, is that the characters, despite me relatively liking them, we don't know much about them, whether it's their background or history. And we didn't get a terribly in-depth look at all the Samurai Rangers, but we at least got an episode or two focusing on them, so you had a very good idea, or a fairly good idea, of their background and their personality, whether it was Emily's shyness and her taking over for her sister, or Kevin's swimming, Mia's episode with her brother, or Antonio's fishing. Even though we didn't get an enormous amount of time focused on them, I felt like we had at least a handle on who they were, which I think they did better than Megaforce. And even so much as little scenes like them training at the base or eating together, I felt like we had a little bit more downtime between episodes, whereas Megaforce just seems like scenes in the school or the juice bar are waypoints between the next battle, like a video game. And I felt, even though I felt disconnected from their life in the city, I felt more so they did a good job of us bringing into the normal lives of the Samurai Rangers, because their normal lives were at the Shiba House training. So I thought they did a better job of that. Now, one of the most important things to me when getting into this series for the second one was the order of watching it. If you don't remember, Samurai started out on the episode The Team Unites, which was episode 3. Now, despite the title actually sounding like a solid pilot episode title, it was not very well done. There are shows where they'll drop you in the middle of the action and tell you about the origins later, but the show has to be designed that way, and this one clearly wasn't. It was a terribly awkward episode to start on. It was mainly Mike-focused. Very strange. So that kind of took me out of it right away when it initially aired. Now this time I got to watch Origins, which is a very solid pilot. I mean, the Symbol Power Horse is hilarious and stupid. But it was a solid pilot, and if you go into it with that and flow, it helps you just sort of get in the mood of the series better. You slide right in there, and you can actually get into the story a little bit better. It just started off awkward right off the bat when it first started. So if you're going to rewatch it or watch it, definitely watch Origins first. It's the way it's meant to be viewed. You could slide right back into it. And I think that was actually an enormous factor for me actually being able to get into Samurai. But I feel like I'm going to go off random tangents again, but for the most part I enjoyed it. The acting, while spotty, wasn't terrible. People got better over time. There were some likable characters and moments. The storyline was good. Like I said, the pilot was solid, and the finale was great. I loved the finale. I thought it was good. I love Antonio. I absolutely love Antonio. Like I said, I hate to bring up Sentai, but I liked him. But I think they did a good job of essentially taking the Japanese character and making him his own. And I loved Antonio. He was great. Now, I shouldn't forget to mention Bulk and Spike, which is another sort of complaint I have about the series. It was very nice to see Bulk back, and the idea of Skull's son, Spike, was funny. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of that whole, oh crap, I got a pie in my face humor. I don't think it's funny. And I liked Bulk and Skull more so later in the series, when they actually became characters instead of idiot bullies. And this essentially returned to that sort of slapstick humor, which I'm not a fan of. And regardless, though, it was nice to see them there. They had moments I enjoyed. The core problem with them is they did not truly interact with the rest of the cast until the very, almost near end, the last half or quarter of the series. And that was a missed opportunity, because episodes like A Strange Case of the Munchies offered some really funny bits with them and Emily and the Samurais, and for especially Samurai, the first half, it felt like they were part of an entirely different show, like a little clip show you might watch between commercial breaks of Samurai. And they really could have integrated them a lot better. That was just sort of poorly handled. It was a nice idea for the sort of relaunch of Power Rangers that could have been just overall handled better. And there were other various nitpicks, like things that were sort of more noticed if you watched Shinkenger, but would be noticed upon a rewatch, is things that were brought up that didn't make sense, like Mike's rivalry with Jaden, which was mentioned one time, and then never brought up again, which was a holdover from Shinkenger's plot, which, to be fair, it wasn't that big there, but it created this sort of awkward thing, or the episode where Mike was out of control, when he really wasn't. But beyond that, honestly, it was a fairly enjoyable watch. Definitely, I do prefer those Power Rangers seasons that go all-out original and throw away the playbook. But with this one, I recommend you go back and give it a second look. You know, pretend you're younger and you hadn't heard about Sentai yet, or you haven't watched it, and you're watching a season like Time Force or Wild Force. And I think you'll find a solid Power Rangers show. Certainly flawed. Definitely flawed. But when I watched it, I honestly enjoyed myself. I liked the characters, the storyline was interesting, and it was just kind of a fun PR series. It's kind of strange for me now to actually sort of be an almost fan of Samurai after hating on it so long, but I think that in the rant I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it had some unfortunate circumstances that it surrounded it, and I think that it's better to go back and watch it now after, people aren't talking about it so much. I think that happens with me a lot. When people aren't being so loud about a particular subject or movie or TV show, and I'm able to electively watch it on my own without them, then you might form a different opinion. Who knows, maybe you'll still hate it. But I've seen quite a few people on Ranger Board and Facebook Rangers and various places that'll come in, and they're fans just like us, older fans, that just found this fandom, and they come in and they say, I watched Samurai, and it was pretty good. Why does everyone hate it? And then people explain reasons like, oh, Shinkenger and acting. And it's kind of actually refreshing. It's kind of like when people seeing people watch Go Busters and seeing it without all this noise about Gokaiger in their head. And it's interesting to see those people untainted by the fandom stink actually able to enjoy it. So, this was a pretty random ramble. Maybe I should have ordered things I wanted to say. It was like half a fan rant, half Samurai overlook. It wasn't intended to be a full-on overlook of the plot, but, just, give Samurai a second chance. It's not that bad. Definitely there can be some improvements in the Saban regime as we go out, but I enjoyed it a lot more the second time, and it sort of brought to light some better things and some things that could have been done better in Megaforce. But I'm probably going to go off the rails here pretty soon with random topics, so I'll just end it here. Thanks for putting up with my half fandom rant. But that's about it. Until next time, Rangers together, Samurai forever. I'm so sorry.